In this video, I'm going to show you how to complete Independent Project 9-4 Excel. So let's get right into it. Step 1, it says open up the Wherever workbook. That's what you see right here. And if you get an Enable Editing button, it should be a yellow bar across the top. Just double click it and then that'll open it up and allow you to edit it. If your instructor tells you to rename the file, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, you can just leave it as is. But it's always a good idea to save it just so you have it on your computer. And that completes step 1. Step 2, it says set the macro security to enable all macros and display the developer tab. So if your developer tab is not showing, you'd see it up here in the ribbon. What you need to do is click File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and over on the right you should see a whole bunch of things that are checked. These are all the tabs that are available to you. If the developer tab is not checked, check it, click OK, and magically it will appear up here. I'm going to select it and then head over here in the code area. It says macro security. It wants us to set it so we can enable all macros. It's one of the macro settings. Most likely your computer won't have that enabled. So if it doesn't, make sure you hit the radio button next to enable all macros. It says it's not recommended because it's partially dangerous, but we know where the files are coming from in this instance. So we're going to select it and click OK. And that completes step 2. Step 3 says to open the Wherever Macros -09 file that you downloaded. Now, this is one of the resources that you should have downloaded when you were getting the start file and the instructions. Whenever I download things, it appears, here we go, it appears in my downloads area. And I like to click next to the date. I like to select the date, and then that way only things that were downloaded today will show up. I can see a folder with a little zipper. It means it's a zipped folder, and I have to extract the files out of here. Now every computer might be a little bit different for most PCs at least. If you hover over top of that folder, you right click, click Extract All. It'll say where would you like that to be extracted to, and I'm going to put it right back into the same folder, the downloads area, but you could select a different place. It says show extracted files when complete. I like to leave that checked because when I click extract, it shows it to me right here. Then I go into that folder, double click on that file, and it should appear. While this is opening up, let's head back over to the SimNet project page. And if you are having any problems with getting those resources unzipped, there's a couple different ways you can get help. You can click on the question mark in the upper right hand portion of the screen, click on SimNet Instant Help, click on Projects, and one of the choices towards the bottom should be extracting resource files. There's a set of instructions and a video you can watch. You could contact customer support, technical support. Click on technical support. You can contact them via chat or phone. You could also talk to your instructor, but I would definitely go to the SimNet Instant Help first. And I'm just going to head back over to that file that we just opened up. I'm going to double click Enable Editing, and that'll allow us to work with this particular workbook. And that completes step 3. It says return to the original workbook you opened up in step 1. And you know it's the original one because it'll have your name in it if you didn't change anything. I have 2, and the one with my name up here, that's the original, that's the first one. That's where it wants us to go to in step 1. So that completes step 4. Step 5, it says make a copy of the inventory sheet. So over in the tab in the lower left hand corner, I hover over it, I right click. I'm going to go rather rapidly here. I click move or copy. I click create a copy and then move to the end. That just pushes it off to the right. Click OK. And it should rename it as inventory 2 with the little parentheses around it. It wants us to change the tab color to green accent 4. I'm going to right click over inventory 2, tab color, and I'm going to select green accent 4. You can hover over all of these until you find green accent 4. That just changes it and shades that in just a little bit. That completes step 5. Step 6. It says run the reorder macro on the inventory 2 sheet. It applies all the conditional formatting. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and I'm reading the instructions and I'm checking off each item as I complete it. I'm on the developer tab. Make sure that I'm on the inventory 2 sheet, developer tab. If I click macro, should be selected as this particular sheet right here. If I click run, it'll run that macro for us, and it applies conditional formatting to cells in the quantity column with a value of less than 3 and leaves the column selected. So that's what you want to have happen. That completes step 6. Step 7, I hold down the control button and the home button. Takes us back up to cell A1. That completes step 7. Step 8, and you'll really want to pay attention here. We need to edit a macro to add a line of code. So we need to, and I want to make sure I'm exactly where I need to be. Make sure you're on the developer tab. You should still probably be there. And it says click the macros button. Click edit. And I apologize if the screen's a little bit small here. I'll try to enlarge it a little bit to help you. But if you follow along with the instructions, you should be fine. Although there are a few little nuances here that you probably want to listen to if you're having challenges. It says edit the line that has formula 1 : equal sign. Anyway, there's a number 3 on that line. I'm just going to select it and then type in 2. Basically, I'm going to replace the 3 with a 2. Then in step 8C, it says after the word false, click after the E in the word false and then hit enter. It's going to get a new line prepared for us right here. And then it says point to in the left-hand margin area next to the line that displays range E4-E39. This can be a little bit finicky here, a little bit fussy. If I click directly to the left of range, it doesn't select the line and turn it blue like you see in the figure in the instructions. So then I click a little bit further over and a little bit further over. When I get right up to this line right here, I should see my pointer appear. If I see that, if I click it, that line turns blue. One quick note, if you accidentally click a little too far left and you see this right here, you see a dot over there, you can just click on that dot and then deselect it. So I'm going to head back. I'm going to get rid of that selection and we're going to do that one more time. I just added that new line after false, and then I hover over next to range. I keep going left until I see my pointer. Then I press the mouse button. It selects it. It wants us to copy and paste. A simple control, you hold down the control button and then the C button at the same time. That copies it. And that blank line, I put my cursor in there, I click in it, and then I hit Control V, and then it copies and pastes that line there. That looks pretty good. Just double checking the instructions here. Make sure I didn't miss anything. It says in step 8I, hit the close button. So it's not like there's an OK button or an enter button down here. It's saying click the X in the upper right hand portion of this window that's open, and that locks that into place. And that completes step 8. Step 9. It says assign a macro to the button form control. So the first thing that we need to do is click the inventory worksheet tab. So you're probably on inventory 2. I'm going to click inventory. Once again, I'm going very slowly here. Make sure everything is going well. It says insert a button form control that covers J3 through K3. So what I need to do here is click on the developer tabs, probably already selected. In the controls area, you should see a little drop down arrow underneath insert. If I click that, there are lots of form controls. And the very first one, it says button and then in the parentheses form control. Maybe it's somewhere different for you, but most likely it's the upper leftmost one. If I click that, you're going to then have the option to select which cell or cells, which area on this workbook. To put a control button, it says J3 through K3. So in the upper left-hand portion of J3, I hold down my mouse button, and then I select all the way over through K3. And then I release that. It says select the wherever macros 9 sheet. And click OK. It wants us now to rename. It should say button 1. Probably it'll say that. Hopefully it'll say that. And it says it wants us to type in and change the label. So I click in here. I'm just going to backspace over what's written currently, and I'm going to type in click here to find items for reorder. And I'm just double checking to make sure that I spelled it correctly. Sometimes I go a little bit too fast and make errors, so it's very important that you take your time. Check figure 950 to make sure that you're putting in exactly what needs to be put in there. If you're fine with that, that completes step 9D. And then 9E says to deselect that, so just click outside of that. Then I click back on it to run the macro. And that should handle that. And that completes step 9. Step 10. Record a macro to insert the date. It says return to the wherever macros file. So I select that. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger here. It might help out for you to see what I'm doing. It says disable the use relative references button. Most likely it's already disabled. I'm going to click on the developer tab. And it's disabled already. If it wasn't, I just click on it, but it's already disabled, so there's nothing for me to do. It's not active. Next, it says record a macro named today. So I click record macro. I change this to today. And it wants me to put in a shortcut here of Control, Shift, and D. And this is important. Sometimes this shortcut may be already taken on your computer. So it's possible that we may have to come back here and change this. Perhaps in the future, they're going to change the instructions just a little bit and maybe change it to Control Shift E or something like that. For right now, the instructions say Control Shift D. I would follow exactly what the workbook instructions say, what the instructions say right now. And then I'm going to show you how to modify this if for some reason it's not working. But follow the instructions. For right now, it says Control Shift D. But if they change it, use something else if they have written something in the future. So I click in that little box next to Control, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and D. And now it should say Control plus Shift plus D. That's going to be our shortcut. It should already be, it says Store Macro In. It should say this workbook. If it wasn't, choose it, but it should say that. Next, I'm going to type in insert date in A2. Click OK. Next, we have to go into A2. And it wants us to type in equal, and then I'm going to type in the equal sign, obviously. Type in 2, and then hit Tab and Enter, and it'll put today's date in cell A2. Next, it says press stop recording and hit Control and Home. Takes us back to cell A1. That's 10F. And then we're going to go back in 10G all the way back to the other workbook, the one with your name in it. And I'm just going to click anywhere. I'm going to leave that. It's fine right there. And it wants us to hit Control Shift D. Nope. I'm actually going to deselect this. I accidentally selected this column. I'm going to click outside anywhere. Control Shift D. And if you happen to get a pencil, that means this shortcut's already used. So I'm going to hit Escape. We're going to go back and do one little modification here. I hit Escape. We're going to head back to the Wherever macro sheet. I'm going to click Macros, the Today macro, Options, and where it says Control, Shift, and D, I'm just going to type in E. In fact, I'm going to type in Shift. I'm going to hold down Shift and E. It should say Control, Shift, E. That should be good to go. I don't even have to run it here. I can X out of it. Now I'm going to go back to the workbook with our name in it. Control, Shift, E, and it runs it, and that should work for us. That completes step 10. Step 11. It says save and close the Wherever macros file. I'm going to go back over and save this. I'm going to save it to my desktop. You can save it wherever works for you. If you happen to get a warning, you may or may not. You could just say OK. That's step 11. Step 12. I'm going to head back over to the workbook that has your name in it. And where it says Macro Security, the Developer tab should be clicked. Macro Security. I'm going to click Disable all macros with notification. I'm going to disable the macros. Click OK. Then I'm going to get rid of this Developer tab. Click File, Options, Custom Ribbon, and then uncheck the Developer square there. Click OK. And that should do it for step 12. Step 13 says to save and close this particular workbook. Step 14 says to upload and save your project. And finally, step 15 says to submit your project for grading. Best of luck, everybody.